Where are the teachers? What teachers are in here to stand up if you're going back to school teaching? Where are the teachers? God bless you. You're the ones somebody should have looked at and said, "Oh, you look nice today." It'll be the last time you look nice for 9 months. You look nice today. You're going to the war zone with the children that were up here earlier. God bless you. I do. I applaud our teachers. I love you and thank you very much for choosing that profession. I wrote a little piece, I don't know how long ago it's been now, last week. I wrote a little piece about teachers and I forgot what I called it. Snots. Anybody see that? Huh? All three of y'all read that? What I called it? Did you remember it? Sniveling snots. Sniveling snots and teachers. And I don't know why I titled it so crudely. It wasn't about that at all. Yeah, okay, it was. But the real point of it was because I wanted to honor a couple of teachers in my life and then to kind of tell all you teachers, God bless you, because you really do make a difference. You have the potential to make a life-changing difference in the kids that you deal with every single day of the week. I gave an honest review in that little blog I wrote that several years ago when I was inspired by somebody to simply look backwards and pay tribute to the people who had made a difference in my life. There were two men who instantly stood out, and I had no doubt that my life took the course it took because of the influence of those two men. And one was Mr. Harold Lichtenwald, who had been the principal in my 7th and 8th grade school in Dallas. And the other was Mr. Fred Gregory, who was a drafting teacher in Mesquite High School. And both of those two men just dramatically impacted my life and shaped my future. And I had the good fortune back when I felt that inspiration and that need to thank those two men. Fortunately, I acted when I did because I found Mr. Harold Lichtenwald in a nursing home, in Buckner Nursing Home in Dallas, Texas. And he was dying with Parkinson's, diabetes, and a third disease I can't remember the name of which he had. And I called a number that I was able to find, and it was his home number, and his lovely wife Cleva answered, and I introduced myself to Cleva, told her who I was and why I was looking for her husband, and she almost bawled on the phone. She said, "You have no idea what an inspiration it would be to him for you to just," I told her I wanted to come see him in person and thank him. And she said, "You have no idea what that'd do for him. But he's in a nursing home and he's dying." And so I drove up just the next few days after that to Dallas, and I'd called her. She didn't tell him I was coming, and she was running late. She said, "Please go on in and introduce yourself to him before I get there." And I walked in that room, and here, I guess I was probably 60 years old, 61 or 2, I don't know. It was a few years back. And I walked into that room in the nursing home, and I knew instantly it was him, even though all those years had transpired. He was a manly man. He was appropriately named Harold because he was a hairy man. He had hair on his arms. He had hair everywhere. And he was a man's man. And I knew the minute I saw him, frail though he was, that's Mr. Lichtenwald hadn't seen him since I was 12 years old. And I stepped in, and he looked over. He couldn't use his arms. He was pretty much paralyzed. And he looked over and said, "Can I help you?" Had his mind and had his voice. And I said, "You are Mr. Harold Lichtenwald?" He said, "I am." I said, "Well, I am a voice from your past." And he said, "How far back?" And I said, "Sidney Lanier Elementary School, 8th grade. Probably 1961, somewhere thereabout." And with nothing else, he just said, "Danny Carpenter." Oh my God. And then he started bawling. And because he was paralyzed, he couldn't wipe the snot on his face, and he couldn't wipe his eyes. And he just started bawling. And he said, I got to have some help over here. I hate to ask, but I can't use my hands. Can you get a box of Kleenex and help me, because I'm a mess? And so I cleaned his face off and pulled a chair up. And man, I had the nicest visit. And I knew in an hour of visiting with him why he made an impact on my life. He never told me he was Christian when I was growing up. He never invited me to his church. I had no doubt that he was somehow. But in that hour or so visit, I saw the heart and the character and the gold of that man who had been a teacher and a principal for years. And he had given his heart to his students because he felt like it was the Christ thing for him to do. And he rescued me from the gangs that were just destroying my school. We were about a mile from downtown Dallas, if that far. And the gangs had invaded our school from the project housing, and I stayed in trouble with them. And Mr. Lichtenwald rescued me from that life and from that danger in invaluable ways. School was horribly bad. The year that I was in the 8th grade, one of the gang members tried to kill my coach. They lured him out of the gym office and hit him in the mouth and face with a baseball bat. Put him in the hospital for about 3 months. They had to reconstruct his lower face, lower jaw. All of his teeth had to be taken away. I got my mother to take me to Methodist Hospital one evening to go see him in the hospital after he'd already been in there a couple of months, and I was shocked. I'd never seen anybody with so much metal sticking out of his face, reconstructing him and rebuilding him. And then I had always heard the following year that the gangs who failed in my 8th grade year, that the following year they shot and killed him coming out of the gym on the steps. And then in my hour-long visit with Mr. Harold Lichtenwald, we were catching up on all the old times from the old neighborhood. And I asked Mr. Lichtenwald what happened to Coach Max Gandy. I heard the gangs shot him the year and killed him on the steps of the year after I left. And he said, no, they shot him in his bed. He didn't show up for school one day, and because of the gang problems, we always kept an active list of phone numbers. So I got a couple of the men teachers to go to his home and see why he wasn't answering his phone. They found the back door broken open, and they slipped in and found him in the bed, shot through the chest and through the head. And then he was surprised that I had not known that Lanier was in the newspaper, because that following year, he had heard one morning that they had come to school to get Mr. Gandy. And so he and the other teachers on that alert rounded up all the gang members in that particular gang, got them in the principal's office, frisked them, and took all their weapons out. And the weapons from that gang, this is 8th grade students, the weapons filled the principal's desk. Knives, chains, brass knuckles, and pistols of various sorts in the 8th grade campus. And Mr. Lichtenwald said, I thought you would probably have seen the paper. And I said, well, I was in the 9th grade. I didn't read the papers. And he said, well, it's framed in my bedroom because it was that photograph. When I called the police to come apprehend the gang members, a newspaper reporter was scanning the police bands, and he beat the cops of the school and wanted to come in and see what we had. And I had told him no before, and this time I realized this is the only way I'm ever going to get the school board to let me have security money for the school. So I let the photographer come in and take a picture of my desk, and it was on the front page of the Dallas Morning News the next morning. And the school board caved in and gave me everything I asked for the security for our 8th grade campus. So I'm telling you all that story just so I can tell all of you kids going back to school, good luck and God bless you. And trust me when I tell you, the schools around here are not where I grew up, thank God. I think you'll be fine, and you have a lot of Christian teachers in your environment. I think you'll be fine. And the good news is you probably won't grow up warped as your pastor has.